So today's agenda, we'll just do a brief high-level overview of, who the Clearinghouse, who we are, and the value that we provide to your institution, and also just some background for what prompted today's webinar, which is the Department of Education guidance that was included in an announcement in this past April of 2017. We'll also go over, how does this impact you as an organization or as an institution, and what does the guidance mean? What steps has the Clearinghouse taken up to today, and so what resources do we have available to you, and what the next steps are that you may need to take, if any. And then we'll also just close today with some unrelated to today's webinar content. We're going to provide you information about future enhancements and also who you can contact if you have questions or concerns later on or an inquiry that arises after today's presentation. And we'll also do a Q&A at the end in case there are any inquiries that you have regarding this presentation. So high level, what do we do for you as an organization? Trusted and secure, we do have a dedicated page on our site that lists the various keepsakes and things of that nature, related badges for security of your data. And also we do offer a variety of services and have widespread data coverage throughout the country and outside. And also we offer innovative solutions. Clearinghouse has homegrown services and functionality for you. So here we go. This is the subject matter for today's webinar. So in April of 2017, the Department of Education released updated information regarding summer guidance. And basically, what does that mean? So what that means is the treatment for summer and for the event that your institution has an optional summer term. And what we mean by optional or non-compulsory is that for your academic calendar, students who were enrolled in the prior spring and who are simply not taking courses during that quote-unquote optional summer term or optional term, if they're not taking courses, you don't consider those students to be withdrawn simply for the fact that they're not taking courses during that optional term. You would consider them to be quote-unquote continuously enrolled. So that's really and truly all that we mean by non-compulsory or optional or summer term for this particular webinar. So for the Department of Ed, what they actually listed, what the content of that April 20th announcement was it included basically just a restatement from the NSLDS Enrollment Reporting Guide regarding how exactly schools should be reporting student enrollment for compliance reporting to NSLDS during those optional terms. And there are a variety of scenarios that can take place. So today's webinar will really focus on what the different reporting scenarios could be, and then also how Clearinghouse, how we advise you to report for those various scenarios. So first and foremost, let's lay our groundwork. When a student is considered to be continuously enrolled, for a student to be considered continuously enrolled at your institution, they are at least half-time during the summer or in another period in which the students are not generally expected to attend classes, as long as the student is expected to attend the next regularly scheduled term, and also the student was enrolled at least half-time at the end of the prior regular term. So if it were the past summer, summer 2017, that would mean that the student was at least half-time in spring. They may or may not be taking courses in the summer, but you do expect them to return in the fall. So in general, those students are considered to be continuously enrolled. So federal reporting expectations for continuously enrolled students during those optional terms like the summer. This information on this particular slide is specific to the Department of Ed guidance that's out there. The slides that follow this one, so we're on slide 8, the slides that follow this one are actually the Clearinghouse's guidance for how we advise you report to us. So I just wanted to make that distinction here, that the information on this current slide, slide 8, is dedicated to providing you with detail about what the Department of Ed expects of you, and then later on we'll describe to you what that means for how you report to Clearinghouse, to us, using enrollment reporting. So moving on, for this particular slide, federal reporting expectations for those students who are continuously enrolled during your optional terms. Such a student should not be reported to NSLDS as withdrawn at the end of the spring term if the student was enrolled at least half-time in the spring and they're expected to return for the fall. So in other words, we don't simply want to report a student as withdrawn to NSLDS just because they happen to not be taking classes during that optional term. And then the second bullet point here, during summer, federal reporting parameters expect a student's prior spring status to be reported to NSLDS during summer. So in other words, on those summer rosters from NSLDS, the expectation is that the information to be sent out to NSLDS during that time for students who simply are not taking optional summer courses. They expect that you report out the earlier spring status. Also for the event that the student is less than half-time during the summer, same exact rule applies. NSLDS's expectation of you is that you report out the prior spring status for a student who is less than half-time during summer, but was in a higher status during the prior spring. So it's, it's a lot to take in, but that is the guidance that was the clarification on summer guidance and summer treatment for optional terms that was released in April. So if you see here up at the top, and this is just, for the sake of if you were to share these slides with colleagues or go back at a later date and review these slides, we wanted to be sure that it was very clear kind of where our guidance to you starts. And so on slide 9, we have up here Clearinghouse recommendation. So for any slides subsequent to this one, if it says Clearinghouse recommendation, that's really just meant to indicate to you that, hey, the detail that's on this slide is applicable to you as an institution who reports to Clearinghouse using enrollment reporting. So Clearinghouse recommendation. Federal reporting expectations for continuously enrolled students during those optional terms like the summer. First bullet point here. Clearinghouse, the way that we advise is not to report students on summer files for the event that they're not taking summer courses. So in other words, student was enrolled in spring, they're not taking any classes for the optional summer. The way that we advise is for your summer first files and summer subsequent of term files, you simply just wouldn't report them to us. And that's how we advise you report during summer for those students. They're just not taking courses in the summer. And then the second bullet point here, the way that Clearinghouse advises to report students who are taking summer courses is that you report them with whatever enrollment status is actually accurate for them for the summer. So if the student is less than half-time for summer, then on a summer file you'd send the less than half-time status to us. If they're half-time during summer, send us that status. So in other words, we will actually make the determination for the appropriate status and effective date to report out on the SSCR process to NSLDS on that roster during the summer months for the event that you have an optional term for the summer. So more recommendations from the Clearinghouse, and this is just a continuation from the prior slide. First bullet point here, the way that we advise that you report students on an optional summer or an optional term file, so your summer first file or summer subsequent files, is if student is taking summer coursework and the status that is true for student term enrollment. So this is really just an echo from a previous slide. Basically, you don't have to do a lot of math, so to speak, or thinking, you know, what status do I report a prior spring? No. You simply, on the summer files, you'd simply just report the status that is accurate for that student to us on those files. So we've got some examples here to kind of showcase what we're talking about. The first example, if the student was enrolled 3/4 time, so that's a deferrable status, they're enrolled 3/4 time in spring, and then they later drop to half-time in the summer. The way that Clearinghouse advises is that the school should report the student's half-time enrollment status on those summer first and summer subsequent of term files. Second example, if the student was enrolled half-time in spring, so again, a deferrable status in spring, but then the student drops to be less than half-time in the summer. The way that we advise is that on your summer first and summer subsequent enrollment files, if the student's considered less than half-time for the summer, then that's the status that you should report to us via enrollment reporting. So this is a big one. We actually did field quite a few inquiries related to this following the IFAP announcement from April of 2017 regarding withdrawn statuses. You know, so it's not really just about the summer less than half-time status. It prompted questions related to the withdrawn status and how do we treat students where we may or may not consider them quote-unquote withdrawn, and it happens to be effective during the summer term if the summer term's optional at your school. So lots of inquiries from that. So we definitely wanted to be sure to have dedicated material related to that piece of the puzzle included in this webinar. So this is just a reminder. Again, this is all Clearinghouse recommendation, everything on this slide. So reminder, if the student is taking courses in the summer or some other optional term, so maybe you have a J term, maybe you have multiple summer modules or things like that, but they're all considered optional terms or sessions, we'll say terms to be clear, for your academic calendar, then what we advise is that the student's actual summer enrollment status is what you would want to report to us. And then a side note here, if such a student subsequently withdraws from your institution and the effective date falls sometime, the effective date is actually sometime during that optional term, then your institution does not expect the student to return for the next regular term. The way that we're really advising here is that for that instance, you would want to report the student as withdrawn to us on a summer file that you have scheduled, or maybe using online update if you're just trying to make an update to one student and you don't have a file scheduled anytime soon. And so a note here, for this particular scenario that's listed above, where the student does not return in the fall, for that event, the withdrawn status will be reported in a timely fashion to NSLDS. And really, the whole idea here is what we want to do is we really want to safeguard and deter from any sort of audit-related challenges that could be associated with untimely reporting of a withdrawn status. So basically, once you're aware of a withdrawal, you'd want to report it to us as swiftly as possible, regardless of what time of year it is, if it's during an optional term or if it's during a required term. If the student's considered withdrawn for financial aid purposes, we'll say, then we advise, report that status to us as soon as you can, and then we'll forward it on to NSLDS indicating that that student's in a terminal status. And that is actually what's going to put the student into timely repayment or grace period, whatever may be applicable for that particular aid recipient. So here's some more information for you on the Clearinghouse recommendations for the withdrawn status reporting as it relates to the optional summer term. And something here that we're just going to echo. So if a student is considered withdrawn, and that would be for financial aid purposes, that student is considered a W status or withdrawn. And, that could be, for the event that a return may need to be done, like an R2T4, then the way that the Clearinghouse advises you report to us is report the corresponding withdrawn status and the appropriate effective date to Clearinghouse using enrollment reporting. And it's actually this particular practice that will, avoid audit exceptions that maybe you may incur that could be related to untimely withdrawn status reporting. Withdrawn status reporting is something that auditors do review regularly for annual audits that are conducted on campus. Second bullet point here, withdrawn statuses, they can be sent in your normal enrollment file submission. So it would be on your required terms scheduled submissions, or if summer's optional for you, it would be on a summer first file, summer subsequent files, and you can also use the online update feature to report those one-offs to us where a student's withdrawn, but you don't have a file scheduled right away with us. And then final bullet point here, subsequent to being withdrawn during the summer for this scenario, so let's read through this one. Let's say the student re-enrolls during fall. They've registered for courses and they do show up in fall and they are considered at least half-time. Their loan deferment would be reinstated. So for the event that the student is considered withdrawn by your school during the optional summer, and you report that to Clearinghouse as such, we communicate that out to NSLDS on the roster, and then later the student re-enrolls in a deferrable status for the fall. For that event, the deferment would typically be reinstated for that particular student. And then finally, the last little note here. However, if the student does not re-enroll for the fall, your reporting of the withdrawn status during the summer would, and this is in reference to all this information above on this slide, the withdrawn status during the summer will have occurred within the required time frame. So, and that's really key here for audit-related matters and, just at the student level, having status changes that change a status from a deferrable one to an out-of-school non-deferrable status. We want it to be done as swiftly as possible. So, following the process on this particular slide will assist you with reporting timely for those instances that students are considered withdrawn. So next slide, and this is not necessarily a slide where there's anything actionable for you. This is really just for awareness's sake and the sake of transparency, just to share with you the steps that we've taken to support with all of the changes that may or may not occur throughout the span of a year or any length of time related to compliance reporting. There are changes that have transpired recently, like the April 2017 clarification, where it really kind of better defines what the expectations are. And so the response is to make adjustments as needed on our end so that we can best assist you with, successful compliance reporting. So one of the things that we did was back on May 1st of this year, so April 20th is when the IFAP announcement was released, and then May 1st we did send out a letter to the FSA. We were requesting some clarification on some of the details related to that clarification about summer treatment for optional terms with the L status. And so those are just some details for what we actually requested clarification on. And then also there, the bottom two bullet points, we did post awareness regarding that April 2017 IFAP announcement letter on the Clearinghouse Compliance Central page, and then we did have a blog post dedicated to that particular topic and content as well. Those are accessible on our website as well. And then finally, we did notify schools that we did not anticipate that your institution would need to make any changes to the way that you send data to us during the summer. Really and truly, the overarching kind of expectation that we have is, or the advisement really, is that you report to us the status that is accurate for the summer, and for the event they're just not taking classes, but they were in the prior spring, you just wouldn't report them during summer. And then for the event that they're withdrawn during the summer, yeah, you'd report them as withdrawn to us, but just for the event you consider them withdrawn. So really it's kind of those three big things. So continued support, this is another page which really is just for the sake of awareness. No action items here or advisement. We do continue to support your institutions with next steps for any additional changes that may come our way with compliance reporting expectations in the future. We didn't hear back regarding certain scenarios that we had posed related to that April 20th release, but we did provide a lot of we did a lot of work internally to figure out, exactly what the best steps were to address any potential compliance challenges that we could foresee in the future, and to do everything necessary to avoid those scenarios by adjusting logic appropriately so that the expectation from the department is met. So noted here, we've just got some additional enhancements we've made to the Clearinghouse process. This is also for awareness, no action items here. We did post some additional guidance on our Compliance Central page and also in the Audit Resource Center blog section, and that was done at the midpoint, or a little after the midpoint, close to the end of July. And then we'll just scroll down to the bottom here. We also do continue to just provide reminders for awareness's sake and transparency's sake for any compliance-related implications that could be associated with reporting during the optional term for things like the withdrawn status. So this is just a list of available resources. This could be a great reference for later. There is, the actual IFAP announcement that we discussed today. Also, information on our Compliance Central page and in our Audit Resource Center blog. And then the specific section of interest related to this particular webinar is in section 4.4.2 of the NSLDS Enrollment Reporting Guide. And that's just so that you can see, not someone's interpretation or not someone just paraphrasing what they read, but the actual guidance that NSLDS or that IFAP was referencing in that April 20th announcement is in the NSLDS Enrollment Reporting Guide in section 4.4.2. And then we've got our Audit Resource Center email address, and we also have our clearinghouseacademy.org website for information about upcoming webinars. So steps to assist you with compliance reporting, and these are just overall best practice recommendations that we have. On our website, I believe it does state report to Clearinghouse on a frequency of every 30 to 45 days. In our experiences related to compliance reporting, we have seen that schools that can feasibly report to us on a monthly basis, that is conducive to compliance reporting and helpful, but 30 to 45 days is what we recommend. Also, when you send us an enrollment file and we provide error resolution on the web, just addressing those errors, reviewing the warnings, taking action where appropriate on warning records, and you know, making sure that it's a swift turnaround is, you know, is ideal, just to adhere to the schedule and for the sake that, you know, an NSLDS roster will be in tow monthly. Also, reviewing details of your enrollment files to really just confirm students are reported with appropriate program information. Now with 150% format, there are those additional expectations that not only is the information accurate at the campus level, but also that the information about student enrollment in specific programs of study is also, you know, accurate, drilled down to the program level as well. Fourth one down, reporting graduates at the campus level and respective program levels as appropriate. So, you know, showing program completion is a must now with 150%. NSLDS does utilize the graduated status that you report for the purpose of calculating for interest subsidy. So reporting those graduated statuses and showing the program completions are helpful to both the students who are being awarded the degrees and also just for the compliance reporting process in general as it relates to the 150% direct loan limit. And then we'll skip down to the bottom one, resolving your NSLDS enrollment roster errors. You might see different people refer to this in different ways. There are a few synonyms for it. So the NSLDS enrollment roster errors, formerly known as the SOCR errors, but basically the roster errors that are returned from NSLDS to Clearinghouse, we post those out to you on our website under our secure portal under user login, and we send you an email alert so that you have awareness that, hey, there are new errors that have been presented, and then we do have an NSE due date listed on that page in a particular column so that you know exactly when these are due. So right now what we'll do is we'll go through some practice scenarios, and we're getting back into Clearinghouse recommendations. So for this first scenario, we'll show you the scenario on the left, and then on the right we'll show how Clearinghouse, how we advise you report to us using enrollment reporting for that particular scenario. So scenario one, the student is withdrawn for spring, but they do enroll less than half time for the summer. And our question really posed here for this scenario is how exactly do we advise that you as an institution report this student to us using enrollment reporting? So the way that we advise is that for this particular situation, you would want to report the student as less than half time on that summer non-compulsory file. And then this is on the back end. So that's what we advise to you is in bold up there. But a little side note here, that last bullet point in the bottom right corner, what we will do on your behalf, according to the ISAP guidance, what we will do is we will actually continue to report out the withdrawn status to NSLDS during the summer months. So it seems really kind of like out there, but basically we will do what needs to be done for the summer in this scenario for the reporting expectation with the government, but the way that we advise you report to us is report just the status that they are in, which is if it's less than half time for the summer, then send us that. And that way, when you are on our website, you're under student lookup, you're seeing that student's enrollment history, just to see what's in our system for that student's history. You'll see the accurate reflection of what that student actually did at your institution. But when you go to look at the NSLDS history, you'll see the W status is what was sent out because that's the status that NSLDS was looking for, even though that happens to just not be the status that the student was for this particular scenario during the summer. So practice scenario number 2. For this scenario, we're going to say that the student is less than half time during the spring. So they're in a non-deferrable status. They're not in deferment for the spring. And then they are taking classes during the summer where they're also less than half-time. And then later on, this student is considered withdrawn for financial aid purposes during the summer term, but they've also registered for courses in the fall. So this one is a mind-boggling one. So there's a lot going on with this particular scenario, but it begs the question, this can happen, so we want to be sure that we provide you with guidance for how we advise that you report for this scenario. So how exactly do we advise? And our answer is long, but this is good information here, I promise you. So for your institution, this scenario really and truly will depend on how exactly you treat these students that fall into these categories, that have these different things occur back-to-back in this sequence, in accordance with the FSA guidance for financial aid purposes on campus. So if a school is completing a return for that particular student and your financial aid office considers that student withdrawn for financial aid, then the way that Clearinghouse advises is that you report the withdrawn status to us that aligns with both the financial aid in-house and also should align with what the federal student aid guidance is that coincides with the financial aid paperwork at the school. So really all systems should match in essence. The different returns and Title IV administration internally in-house on campus for financial aid, those should align with the enrollment statuses being reported to Clearinghouse, and then that way it better safeguards from there being compliance reporting issues on that SSCR process when we're providing updates to NSLDS on the roster. So last bullet point here, for the event that the school reports a withdrawn status to Clearinghouse on a summer file, the Clearinghouse can then transmit the withdrawn status to NSLDS using the enrollment reporting SSCR process. We have two more scenarios for you. Here's our third one. And there's a side note here for this. We've got an asterisk here. For this particular scenario will be applicable to you if you're an institution who reports multiple sessions in the summer. So if you have different sessions, like a May session, a June, like different sessions, and you actually view them as sub-sessions that are part of the larger summer term, and all of which are optional, then this scenario would be applicable and could be relevant for your school. So for this scenario, the student's full-time in spring, so they're in a deferrable status in the prior required spring term, and then later they are full-time in your first summer session. But when summer session starts, that student drops to less than half-time. So how exactly do we advise that you report to Clearinghouse using enrollment reporting for these particular circumstances? And it's another long action, but this information hopefully will prove helpful to you. The way that we advise is that your institution reports students for that summer 2 session, that you report them to us as less than half-time. And I'm hoping that that makes sense and adds some clarity. But really and truly, you just want to report the status that you assess the student as at for financial aid purposes on campus. That's how we advise that you would report to us. Enrollment status and effective date for any school's financial aid administration really and truly should match what is sent from the school to Clearinghouse using enrollment reporting. And then once the student's reported from your school to us as less than half-time for that summer 2 session, we actually will suppress or omit sending the less than half-time status. And instead of that, in lieu of sending that status, what we'll go ahead and do is we're going to send that prior full-time status from the most recent compulsory term. So that would mean the most recent spring term. Again, this is all just to ensure that what we're submitting to NSLDS is meeting that Department of Ed expectation. And then here's our final scenario. Again, this last scenario, this is going to be one for really and truly for institutions who have multiple sessions that fall during the optional summer term. So for this scenario, the students have time in spring, so they're in a deferrable status in spring, and then later they don't take any classes for summer 1. And then, so summer 2, they are full-time. How exactly should you report that particular scenario to Clearinghouse? So the way that we advise is that you do not report the student to Clearinghouse for summer 1. In other words, you wouldn't report them as withdrawn. You would, on the summer 1, you would report them, I'm sorry, you just would not report them, just to clarify. You would not report those on the summer, those students on a summer 1. And then second bullet point here, the way that we advise you report the student for the summer 2 session would be to report them in that accurate in-school status for summer. You'd report that full-time status. And then just a side note here, enrollment status and the status start date for any school's financial aid administration, really just we want it to align or not conflict but match with what's sent from the school to the Clearinghouse using enrollment reporting. So just some next steps, and we'll kind of breeze through these. So we will continue to keep you posted on any and all communications that we receive or that we learn of or that we gain awareness about regarding the Department of Education, FSA, and NSLDS that's related to this, treatment for optional summer terms or optional terms. If there's any new information posted, we will make sure that we bring awareness to you and colleagues about that. Also, we do regularly post relevant and trending topic blogs on our Compliance Central page and also our Audit Resource Center page. This is just a key point here, the 4th bullet point down. Make sure that you report students, just really and truly report them in the actual enrollment status that they have if taking an optional summer file, or if taking an optional summer course. So if they're enrolled less than half-time during the summer, then just report that to us, and then we'll make the determination whether or not to report out a prior spring during the summer or to report out that L for the event the student was less than half-time in the prior spring. And then second to last bullet point, for the event that the school considers that the student has withdrawn at the campus level, so overall at the school you consider them withdrawn, separated from the school, then we ask that you report this to us using enrollment reporting. And if you do report a withdrawn status using enrollment reporting, this should align with what you do on campus for the event that financial aid or the student is considered withdrawn for financial aid purposes. So you can always contact us as well, auditresource@studentclearinghouse.org, just in case you have any additional questions or something comes up where you have an inquiry. So this is unrelated to today's topic, but just things that are in the pipeline that are on the docket. We are working on, the G from degree process that we have in place and just adding some much needed transparency to that process, and we will be providing you with updates on that using blog posts and also email updates, and so that's to come. Stack record scenario, that's something that that is an active pursuit right now, so that we can supply more than one certification for compliance reporting at one time, because there are instances where status changes could occur and be captured in a short period of time, or you may be doing some sort of record rebuild or something like that. So there are certainly scenarios where that would be beneficial, that kind of functionality. Also, we are working, we have received feedback about our error and warning process for the reconciliation of enrollment reporting files. So we are working on just enhancing that process for you so that it works more for you. And then the last one there, just continued improvements to our Compliance Central page and also our Audit Resource Center site. We want those pages to be useful to you. A goal would be that, you know, if you're like, I'm trying to find something, we want that page to be someplace that you can go that provides you with relevant information that, that you can use and that you can apply where you need to apply it when questions come up about compliance reporting. And these are our resources. We had mentioned those earlier. Audit Resource Center, Compliance Central page, and we also have our Clearinghouse Academy site. This is just an overview of our Audit Resource Center. If you have any financial aid audit inquiries or enrollment reporting questions surrounding compliance reporting where you have concerns or questions about whether or not something was compliant or any sort of internal or external audit inquiry surrounding compliance reporting, our Audit Resource Center is on standby to field those types of inquiries and support your school. And then our Compliance Central page, this is updated regularly. We do include links on this particular page of our site to provide you with details of the latest announcements that are directly from the Department of Education, IFAP, NSLDS, FSA. And this is just a page showing our Clearinghouse Academy site. If you're interested in joining us for one of our In Your Neighborhoods, we do have subject matter experts and colleagues going out to do half-day sessions, which are really great and fun, and it's fun to meet everyone. And here are just some more email addresses and URL address in case you want to get in touch